Hello everybody and welcome to Jazz Piano Daily 145. Today I'm going to give you an easier way of looking at modes and kind of give you my take on modes and when to use them and their usefulness. So let's jump into the music here. So first of all, normally I would be hiding this music. I'm not going to for this one because I want everyone to be able to see this lesson in its entirety. But if you want to be able to get the sheet music for all of my lessons for Jazz Piano Daily, just go back to jazzpianodaily.com and you can find out all of the membership options there. All right, so here you can see I got my G major scale and then I got all of my different modes here. Aeolian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian, all right? So first of all, let's talk about what a mode is and how to form it. So a mode is just simply, like you can think of like a mode of transportation, right? There's many different modes of transportation. You might take a bus, then a car, then a train, then a plane, right? But what's happening? You're still going from here to there, right? From here to there. It's going a distance. It's going, a certain amount of distance. Same thing happens when we're talking about modes at the piano. It's simply a scale going from one note to another note. It's going a certain distance. And then all we're doing is we're just shifting that mode, right? So again, you could think of it like a mode of transportation. It's a lot of times easier to see in the key of C, because if I mash down all of my white notes from C to C, we know this as a C major scale. This is also called the Ionian mode, right? So see how this says G major scale. I can also put this in G Ionian, all right? So the Ionian. And these are the Greek modes. Okay, so this is my C major scale or my Ionian mode, right? And if I literally just lift up and move my fingers, okay, now I'm going from D to D, E to E, F to F, G to G, A to A, B to B, C to C. And what you'll notice is that I'm still playing just all of the same notes from the C major scale, right? So I'm utilizing just notes from the C major scale. And all I'm doing is, rather than starting on C and going to C, instead I'm changing the mode and I'm going from D to D, right? So it's pretty simple. It's just the notes of the major scale. All you're doing now is just shifting from the note D to the note D. So you might wonder, so wait a second, a Mixolydian mode, which would normally be played over like a dominant seventh chord. You might be wondering, okay, so that's G to G is my Mixolydian mode. Why can't I just play my C major scale over that? Well, guess what? You can. The reason, though, you do the mode is because, notice, starting on G gives you your chord tones. Okay, so you see how you get those chord tones in that, in the scale as you're playing it. Whereas if I started on C, right, I'm hitting notes that are not really going to sound great over that G7 chord, right? So the mode is just literally a way of organizing the notes of the major scale to make it fit the chord sound a little bit better. All right, so now here's the thing. If you're not sitting down, sit down, because I'm about to tell you that I think modes are overrated. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't learn modes, but so much attention is paid to modes, just like the circle of fifths. For some reason, it's gotten into the mindset of a lot of players, especially beginning players, that if I just learn my circle of fifths and if I just learn my modes, like everything will be great and I'll be able to play. No, it's not true at all, right? And as you get to understand music better, you realize that, okay, yes, these are useful and they have their time and their place, but way too much attention is paid onto learning modes, right? So where or when would you actually utilize these modes? All right, let's move back to G major for a second, okay? So we have our G major scale, right? Or this is also called G Ionian, right? If I go my G major scale from A to A, this is considered my A Dorian scale. A lot of times we would play this over minor chords. But a lot of times it wouldn't just be over a minor chord, it would be over a minor chord that is in a Dorian kind of sound. So like if I... So if I'm playing So What, right, I forget the bass line. There it is. Right, so that's So What, Miles Davis. There I might use my Dorian scale. And then when I move up to E flat, then I would use my E flat Dorian scale. But a lot of times, I'm not going to be utilizing that Dorian scale on just regular old minor chords. A lot of times I'll be using my natural minor scale, or maybe a harmonic minor scale, or some other scale, maybe even a minor pentatonic scale or a blues scale, right? So anyway, A to A on the G major scale is my A Dorian scale. B to B is my B Phrygian scale. C to C is my Lydian scale. D to D is my Mixolydian. E to E is Aeolian, or also considered my natural minor scale. And F sharp to F sharp is my Locrian scale. All right, so let's go back and talk about what kind of chords you would typically use over these. Locrian would be a minor 7 flat 5. A lot of times you play your Locrian scale, maybe your Locrian scale with your natural 9. Okay. The E Aeolian, it's also natural minor. A lot of times it's just be over a minor scale. Mixolydian, over your dominant chord. Okay, so a lot of times over a dominant 7th chord, you play Mixolydian. Lydian works well over a major 7th chord. Right? So a lot of times you play that over a major 7th chord. It also gives you that kind of like religious, uplifting kind of feel. I can give you that very warm, uplifting feel. You'll hear that in To Kill a Mockingbird, you know, Boo Radley's theme, like, you know, or Scout's theme. I forget who it was, but one of those. You'll hear that sharp 11 in there. That is all based off of Lydian, sharp 11. The B Phrygian scale. Phrygian is very interesting because so you can hear how it gets a very kind of almost like a flamenco-y kind of sound to it. You can hear that influence in there. So that Phrygian scale is a very distinct scale, and that's a great scale. This is one of the modes that I would definitely say check out. Out of all the modes, the Phrygian one is really kind of the most interesting one. Dorian, we've already covered. That's typically over a minor chord, but it's usually over a minor chord that's based in a Dorian kind of sound or a Dorian song. And in the Ionian scale, that's your major scale. You use that just over a regular major chord, right? So, okay, so Willie, if you're saying, you know, don't spend a lot of time on the modes, so what should I do with the modes? Well, the first thing is you should understand what the modes are, right? All the modes are is literally just a major scale starting on a different note than the root, right? And honestly, even going on the root is still a mode. It's the Ionian mode, right? So in C, that's Ionian. It's still a mode, right? But typically, when we refer to this, we don't refer to this as the C Ionian scale. We refer to it as a C major scale, right? But if we just move that C major scale and start it on a different note, that is a mode of the major scale. Now, there's two things to keep in mind with your modes. Number one is, again, if I'm in the key of C here, right, and I go to Dorian here, this is D Dorian, okay? This means that this is the D Dorian scale. This is not Dorian in the key of D, All right, so pay attention to that. I'm going to say that again and give you another example because that's always one thing that kind of confuses students. So if I'm thinking in the key of C, mixolydian in the key of C would be G mixolydian, right? Okay, so G mixolydian. It's the fifth mode of the major scale. So mixolydian in the key of C would be G mixolydian. My G mixolydian scale is this. If I want mixolydian in the key of G, it's not that, right? I have to switch to the key of G, which is my G major scale, and then go to the fifth mode, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, from D to D in the G major scale. That is my mixolydian mode in the key of G, all right? That's mixolydian in the key of G, which happens to be D mixolydian. So just understand that there's like kind of a shift in your thinking there. There's C mixolydian and there is mixolydian in the key of C, right? So C mixolydian is this. C mixolydian is the fifth mode of the F major scale, right? Now mixolydian in the key of C is this. It's G mixolydian, okay? So another way of looking at your modes as well is to look at how they are different from the major scale. So Ionian is obviously no different. It is the major scale. Dorian is flat 3 and flat 7. Okay? Flat 3, flat 7. Phrygian is you have so when you think about it in terms of the E major scale. So here is E Phrygian. So if I think of the E major scale, I have flat 2 and flat 3, and flat 6 and flat 7. So flat 2 and flat 3, flat 6, flat 7 is my Phrygian scale. Think of how this is different than F. You see Lydian is sharp 4, mixolydian, right? Flatting the 7th. Aeolian, you're flatting the 3rd, 6th, and 7th to make Aeolian. And Locrian is a whole bunch going on there. Flatting 2 and 3, 5, 6, and 7. Okay? All right, so anyway, play around with the modes. All right, just kind of play around with the sound. And one easy way of playing around with it is, let's say I'm going to take B Phrygian, okay? So all I'm playing is root 5 root down there. Let's say I'm going to do A Dorian. So I'm going to do D mixolydian. Okay. F sharp Lydian. I'm sorry, F sharp Locrian. Here, what I would probably do is I would play the flat 5. Okay? So you can just kind of play around and just try and get the sound of those modes in your ears and try to understand them from a theoretical standpoint and just know what the notes are. But again, especially if your practice time is limited, don't spend a bunch of time doing this. You'd be way better off learning things like your minor pentatonic scales, your blues scales, your altered scales, right? Your major scales. Just learn the major scales, right? Because then to go and try and learn some of these, well, they're easy once you know your major scales. But if you don't know your major scale, then it's going to be really, really difficult. And the modes are way easier to think of them in terms of their relationship to the major scale. For instance, if you need Dorian, flat 3, flat 7. So whatever major scale you have, there's E flat, flat 3, flat 7. Right? So there's E flat major, flat the 3rd, flat the 7th. But if you don't know the major scale, then it's going to be really difficult for you to be able to flat the 3rd and flat the 7th, right? So if you want to focus on your modes, make sure you know your major scales first. Really know your major scales inside and out. And you should know how to spell the major scale. You should know how to play the major scale. You should really know the major scale. If you don't, please don't go on to the modes, okay? Because you're just not going to be successful with them, and I want to see you be successful. So if you really want to be successful with the modes, know your major scales first, inside and out. Then move on to your modes if you really feel like you want to. But again, I would take a look at some of those other scales. I'd go from major scales to maybe minor pentatonic scale. That's a really useful scale to have under your fingertips. The altered scale is really useful to have. You know, it's like Locrian is good, especially for your minor 7 flat 5. But anyway, the point is there's a lot of other scales that would be much better learned before you dive into trying to understand the modes and unlock the secret of the modes, which guess what? There's no secret. Okay, so some of you will disagree with me. Some of you will agree. I'm just telling you, based on my 40 years of experience playing, I have found that the modes have been way down here in terms of like me really needing to tap into this. When I'm playing and composing and writing and doing sessions and all that stuff, this stuff does not come into my playing as much as many other things like pentatonics, chordals, altered, all that stuff, right? So anyway, have fun with it. I'll see you in the next lesson. To get the first 45 pages of music for free, just go back to jazzpianodaily.com. If you liked the video, please be sure to click the like button and also subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. To watch the rest of the lessons in this series, just click on the playlist to the right of this arrow. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video.